Well, hello. Welcome back to Toys Thursday with Johnny Tiger on October 27th, 2022. This cool looking dude in front of the camera with a long rifle in his right hand and a pistol in his left hand and a sword on his belt is none other than Benjamin Hornigold. Now, I am talking like anyone who hears that name, Benjamin Hornigold, should be very familiar with him, but don't feel bad if you don't know who he is. He is somewhat of a historical figure, but this particular uh, portrayal is from the video game Assassin's Creed 4, which I have never played, and I really have very little interest in Assassin's Creed. I purchased Benjamin Hornigold oh so many years ago, mostly because well he's a really cool looking pirate. He's a pirate action figure and depicting a pirate from the Middle Ages and uh, pretty well made. So that's pretty much why I got him. Now, why is Benjamin Hornigold opening the show for us today? Because he's not only a pirate, he's also a patriot. And he's not only just a pirate and a patriot, he later got a royal pardon from England and then became a member of the Royal Navy and sort of jumped ship, pun intended, and became a pirate hunter. Now, his backstory is very interesting, actually, and very long and involved, and it is a very interesting action figure. So, I am going to do an individual episode on him and his compatriot in the future. Why is he opening the show? Because he does have that Royal Navy connection, and we are here to celebrating National Navy Day today. National Navy Day. This is actually National Navy Day for the United States, not for Canada. But hey, hats off and salute to all the men and women who are working hard and uh, pro protecting, defending our borders and our sea coast and from other threats. No matter if you are American, Canadian, or wherever you are in the Navy. Hats off to you today. As far as Navy Day goes, today is actually rather special because today not only it is National Navy Day in the United States, it is the 100 years anniversary of the National Navy Day. National Navy Day was first suggested and became a thing in 1922. So we are 2022. So yes, it is the 100-year anniversary of National Navy Day. Now, just sit back and think about that for a second. It is a very special day. So we open the show with a rather special action figure. But if the only thing I can show you for Navy Day is someone who's a medieval Royal Navy member, that would be a little bit, well, a little lame, a little lame. So we're going to ask Mr. Hornigold to step off the stage and bring in our real hero of the day, a person who is bigger than life and actually has a more modern uh, caricature of someone who actually served in the Navy. I say actually, but this is not a real person. It's in the Navy in his respective comic book universe. Before we go any further, let me entertain you with a little, well, kind of funny little story. You see, growing up in Taiwan, I really didn't know that much about people in the U.S. military or the Canadian Armed Forces. I didn't really know what the Air Force was like, the Navy, the Marine. To me, I didn't know about the Marine when I was growing up. Army, I knew a little bit because in Taiwan, everyone had to become join the military when you turn 18, and most people ended up in the army. So I knew a little bit about what the army was about. So this is to say, I grew up with very little knowledge uh, as to what the military personnel were like in the US and in Canada, other than what we were shown on TV, which is a little bit misleading. Um, so going back, going back, oh, this is going back 10, 15 years, uh, when I was still with my ex-girlfriend, and meeting her brother-in-law for the first time. Now, my ex-girlfriend lived in Canada, but her sister was married to a guy in the U.S. And I kept hearing about this brother-in-law. Uh, she told me he was black and he was in the U.S. Navy. Now, keep in mind, like I said, I had very little understanding or experience with uh, running into people that in the Navy or Army or stuff like that in Canada or the US. So in my head, when she said he's black and he's in the Navy, I was thinking about some kind of big, burly Navy SEAL guy, like probably more in line with our action figure of the day that we're going to bring in a little bit. And then finally, I met a guy, and he's like 5'2" and wore glasses and very kind of overweight and chunky and didn't look like he ran very fast. And that was totally shocking. Like I had no idea that people in the military could look like that. But of course, now after all these years training and working and meeting various people that have been uh, in service in various branches, now I know that people in the military don't always look like what we're shown in Rambo or in Predator in those movies. They're big people, small people, muscular people, skinny people, fat people. Anyone can go in the military. There's something for anyone to do in the military. But back then, yeah, that was a totally shocking experience. I mean, here this guy turned out to be just a normal guy, like someone I would run into at the office, instead of what I had in my mind, a big, burly Navy SEAL guy who could probably bench press 1,000 pounds and bend iron bar with his mouth. Someone like this guy. Meet Sergeant Joseph Mendoza, 6'8" and almost 400 pounds of manly physique. He comes from the Wetworks comic book from Image Comic. Now, if you are not familiar, if you don't know what Wetworks is, that's okay. A lot of people don't know what Wetworks is. Long story short, Wetworks was a run of comic books uh, that came out in the, I believe, late 80s, early 90s. It didn't last that long, but it's personally, I really liked it. I liked the storyline. Wetworks is about this group of soldiers that worked for the United States, and they were what you would call black ops. So they were on a team called Team Seven, and they were uh, what the country would send out to deal with things that they didn't want people to know about. Like if someone need to be assassinated or they need to go extract hostage or to deal with some UFO or aliens or things that people didn't need to know. Those really like secretive Area 51 kind of stuff. Team 7 would get sent in. And everyone on Team 7 was handpicked from various branches of the U.S. military. Some of them were Air Force, some of them Navy SEALs, some of them Rangers, some of them Marine. But even though they all had different backgrounds, different looks, different expertise, one thing they had in common was they were the top of the line. They were the best soldier from every branch of the military, and every one of them knew that they were expendable because officially they no longer existed. During one of the operations, Team 7 basically found this factory full of alien technology, and these alien organisms bonded with the team members, turning them into superhumans. And then the U.S. government tried to kill them, and so they basically just ran away and went rogue. No longer served the country because basically the country sold them out, tried to murder them, and they call themselves Wetworks. They still fight the good fight, but now they no longer listen to the president. They no longer play the game of the politicians. Now they are their own unit, and they specialize in dealing with supernatural beings, like a lot of their targets, a lot of people, creatures that were fighting were vampires and werewolves. So, long story short, you have this group of highly trained super soldiers that were former United States best of the best, and now they are bonded with alien organisms that give them superhuman abilities, and now they are uh, out there protecting the world from things like werewolves and aliens and vampires and so on and so on. That is the story of Wetworks. For me, who grew up on superhero comic books and stuff like that, where you have like Superman and Spider-Man and a lot of those guys, it's this is very refreshing because these guys they're not trying to be superheroes. These guys are still trying to be soldiers, which means their way of dealing with things had very little to do with let's not kill the person because we are the good guys, or we need to have high moral values or stuff like that. No, the guy for of a Wetworks team, they basically have a very simple way of solving problems. There's a vampire out there that's killing people, or there's a vampire nation that's trying to take over the world. We go there with a lot of guns and nuclear weapons and our superpowers, and we get rid of them. That is a very refreshing way of dealing with problems, and it's a more of a mature adult kind of comic book. Uh, Definitely not suitable for children. Now, back to our main character of the day, Joseph Mendoza. His teammate, his friend, called him Dozer, and when he bonded with an alien organism like the rest of the team, he gained a few new superpower. The organism he bonded with allowed him to cover himself with a golden layer of body armor that basically fused with his skin, which means uh, you can't like other than his skin turning a golden color, you can't tell that he's wearing armor. He's still like he just looked like a guy with golden skin, but that armor is bulletproof and give him a lot of invulnerability. He can survive a lot of stuff, and also give him massive superhuman strength. The golden organism or symbiote also allow him to communicate with the rest of his team by using telepathic messages. So he could just sync, and they would receive whatever he wanted to tell them. His own organism, his own symbiote, also allow him to grow to even bigger sizes, grow more muscular, and later in the comic book, allow him to transform part of his body into claws or spikes or blades for his hand-to-hand close quarter combat convenient. Even without the symbiote, uh, Joseph Mendoza is a huge guy. Like I said, 6'8", almost 400 pounds, a former Navy SEAL who specializes in uh, not happy, heavy weapons. This guy is a genius when it comes to heavy weapons. In fact, he had found uses to incorporate some of the more antique weapons into modern warfare that forced the rewrite of several military manuals. Long story short, he was recruited to be on Team 7 and later went rogue with the survivors on Team 7 to become Wetworks because he is the team's heavy weapon expert. And also, he is basically the team's muscle guys. I mean, everyone on that team, everyone on Wetworks is really strong and muscular and fast. But uh, Dozer or Mendoza is the strongest of them all, and he has the ability to grow in size. Uh, at when he wants to, he can get really, really big. So he's like an Incredible Hulk that can grow huge, like even bigger than he normally is. However, if he's not careful, sometimes the symbiote can take over and make him grow out of control. There has been times when he loses control of himself and grows so big that he can't even move. He basically, literally growing to the size of a building, and he can't even get stand up or move around. So he has to exert lot of mental discipline. So he only grows so much. He's not going to grow out of control like that. This action figure of Joseph Mendoza was made around 1997 or 96, so it's one of the older action figures in my collection. He was made along with other Wetworks action figure by Todd McFarlane, who was the king of action figure in the mid 90s. I mean, I can kind of argue that he still is the king of action figures. Todd McFarlane has been doing some amazing stuff, but nowadays there's a lot of other good companies, so it's not as obvious. But back then, in the mid '90s, you wouldn't be able to find anyone else that even come close to the level of details and craftsmanship that Todd McFarlane was putting on his action figure. And Mendoza here is one really good example. Uh, Despite him being really old, always say if you ask me to show you uh, my top 10, maybe my top 15 favorite action figure in my collection, Mendoza is going to be in among the top 10 or top 15 because I always say that this guy has one of the best looking physique I've seen in action figure form. Like this guy's big, but he's not all bloated like Incredible Hulk or a lot of the big characters we've seen from comic book. This guy is big, but he look like he's like in fantastic shape. Uh, yeah, seriously, I mean, the musculature on this guy and the shape of his torso, his arms are thick, his legs are like tree trunks, and he's got this deep chest and really defined abs and the muscles on his back. Honestly, I have handled a lot of muscular, chunky action figures, but very few of them make me sort of go, wow, this guy has such a nice body. I mean, that's just a little bit homophobic right there, but you know, yeah, like for someone who appreciates some chunky, muscular action figures, I will say Mendoza here is top of the line. This is some prime muscular physique right there. Just a relatively closer view of his arm. I mean, yeah, that's crazy, crazy amount of muscles on the arm right there. But this guy's muscle puts guys like Superman, Batman, those guys to shame. He's just like a really big and muscular guy. Uh, Now, because he was made in the mid 90s, he doesn't have a lot of articulation comparing to figures of today. In fact, uh, he's only articulated at the waist, shoulder, wrist, and hips, which means you really can't do much with him. Like, there's not a lot of poses you can do with him. And on top of that, the armor padding on his shoulder really limit how high his arm can lift. So he can't even lift his arm overhead because the shoulder armor is going to scrape against the muscles on his back. So yeah, so even the articulation at there is limited by the design of the character. Now, before we get to the accessory, let me show you guys. There's two versions of Joseph Mendoza. Uh, Todd McFarlane released this guy in Series 1 of Wetworks and then again in Series 2. I believe the two have different paint work. I believe one is a golden color, like when he has his power activated, and the other one is flesh color, like uh when his power is not activated. But you can correct me on that if I'm wrong, because I'm not quite sure if that is the case. But let me show you guys both version of this guy. Both versions have exactly the same sculpt and have exactly the same lack of articulation. Like I said, the paint I think is different. One is the gold and the other one is more flesh color. Um, and they do come with different weapons, and I'll show that when we get to the accessories. But before that, I want to quickly give you guys a little bit of a size comparison with other action figures so you can really appreciate how impressive this guy is. Here is Mendoza standing right behind uh, an action figure of Juggernaut, who was created by Toy Biz at around the same time. They were both figures from the mid 90s. And as most of you that know your comic books know, Juggernaut is a huge, massive figure. But you stand Mendoza behind this guy, they're from the same era, and yeah, Mendoza is like thicker and wider and taller uh, than Juggernaut here by almost 2 inches. Now, it's not a very fair comparison because back then, a lot of the big figures, especially figures that were not made by McFarlane, were really undersized, and Juggernaut was no exception. He was really, really too small. But this gives you an idea of what Mendoza looked like when paired with an action figure that comes from his own time. Now here is Mendoza posing with Captain America, and this Captain America is a modern one. This is, I believe this was released in 2020, so it almost 25 years newer than Mendoza. It's a modern action figure built on the modern scale, but you can see in the photo here that even this modern Captain America is very small comparing to Mendoza. He's almost the same height, but as far as the thickness of the body and the musculature, there's no comparison there. Mendoza just looked like he can uh, probably bicep curl Captain America with one arm. But if we bring in a real big gun, like one of the real contenders in the muscle group, we have Hercules from Marvel Comics. This one was made, I believe this Hercules was made about 8 years ago. And again, in my collection, this guy ranked up there near the top as some of the best body structure, best musculature. And when he stand with Mendoza, you can see that Hercules is definitely taller than Mendoza, although Mendoza is always stuck in that crouching position. So it's not a real fair comparison. I believe if Mendoza can stand straight, they'd be closer in height. But you look at their size, the size of their body and the musculature, these two are very comparable. So Mendoza is roughly the same size, maybe slightly bigger than even Hercules, who's known to be one of the powerhouses from Marvel Comics. Yeah, I think if you're a normal size guy walking into these two guys, you look at them from behind, these two just look like a couple of human-shaped brick walls. It's quite hilarious when you think about it. And here is what it looked like when you have Mendoza posing with someone who's sized to be like a more normal person, like J. Jonah Jameson here from Marvel Comics. You often talk about, hear people say so and so is twice as wide as so and you kind of think, can that be possible? Well, in this case, apparently so. You look at Mendoza, he's probably two times or maybe even three times the size of J. Jonah Jameson. Now, obviously, to be the team's heavy weapons expert, uh, it would make sense that Mendoza has to come with some heavy artillery, and luckily, he does. He comes with this like a mini gun, like a machine gun with multiple barrels for his right hand, and the left hand, I'm not quite sure what that is. That looks like a missile launcher or a rocket launcher of some kind. And then there's these two bandoliers bullets that you can attach to these weapons and then attach to his shoulder pad. When you install everything, which take a little bit finicky, I'm not going to lie about that. It's a little bit frustrating to get the weapons into his hand and get the bandoliers to attach properly. But once you get it to stay put, this guy looks even more impressive than he already is. I mean, just look at the kind of profile these weapons give him when he has them in his hand and the bandoliers attached to his body. And as I said, the other version, while it use the same exact body, has a different paint scheme and comes with different weapon. The other version comes with this huge, ridiculously huge, I don't even know what it is, some kind of cannon that looks like it should be mounted on a spaceship or at the very least a tank. And yeah, it's so big that he actually needs two hands to hold it, and even then he can't really hold it all that well. It's big enough that you think you look at this thing, there's enough material right there for a second action figure. So in the end, um, even though there's not a heck of a lot about Joseph Mendoza, other than he was a Navy SEAL who got involved in a secret military program that turned him into a superhuman, and he's abnormally strong and big. The fact remains, it's a very interesting looking action figure from a very interesting storyline and property. I really wish that someday Todd McFarlane will see fit to bring back the Wetwork action figure and actually make these action figures in their modern uh, scales, modern incarnations, and allow us to complete the team. Because back in the 90s, he only did two series of these guys and never finished the entire team. So far, I have a few members of the Wetworks team, but it's incomplete. So I really wish that someday, somehow, we can get the team completed. Don't forget, if you know someone or if you have family members and friends who's serving in the Navy, who have been in the Navy, today is U.S. National Navy Day. So give them some love, thank them for serving their duties for the country, and I thank you for being here with me for Navy Day for Toy Thursday, and we'll be back again tomorrow for some Fitness Friday, which we will do some Navy style workout, whatever those are.